Tools you're going to need to change the brake pads. Just the brake pads. I'm not replacing the rotors or discs. There's no point. They're barely worn at all. Pads that were on the car have done about 90,000 miles. They just at the wear bars, so they're squealing a little bit. It's not squealing because the friction plates have worn through. It's just that the wear bars now just very slightly touching the disc, causing a bit of a high-pitched squeal. So new set of pads. So what you're going to need, first off, you're going to need 17mm socket. That's to get the caliper off, or the pad carrier, should I say, the pad carrier off. You're obviously going to need your locking wheel nut. Don't lose it. You lose it, you're knackered. And then you're going to need a 21mm socket as well. That's to take the other lug nuts off. 21mm socket also obviously fits the locking wheel nut. Other things, set of G-clamps, preferably with rubber stops on them. That's to push the pistons back once you've taken the old pads out and you need to reset them back to the final position. A brush just to dust off some of the brake dust from areas. Wire brush to clean up the calipers while you've got it off. You might as well clean up the inside of the carriers and make sure things are nice and smooth and back to new as much as possible. Cloth, because you're always going to need a cloth just to wipe some stuff down. Bit of copper grease. Copper grease is only really for the wheel, the inside of the wheel when you're taking it off, just to make it sure that you can put it back on, take it off, put it back on in the future without it sticking. We don't use copper grease anymore on the back of the brake pads. We always used to, but now they've got anti-vibration pads or slips on them. I'll show you that in a minute. Obviously you're going to need a new set of pads. Leave them in the box. Try not to touch them with your fingers. Definitely not on the abrasive side, and literally just leave them in the box as long as you can. I went for the Odo ones. They're the best ones that my local supplier could get hold of. They were about £44 for a set of fronts. Like I say, it's only the pads, no discs. Decided to go for those because I'm not going to scrimp. I do tow with the caravan quite a lot, so yeah, I'm not going to buy the cheap ones and hope that they stop me if I need to. But also, I decided not to go for the EBC red stuff or green stuff pads. I might try those next time. We'll see how we get on with these. However, I'm kind of expecting these to last the life of the car, really, that we will have it. If I was, planning on racing me Outlander, I might consider the EBC pads, but I'm not, and these will be more than enough for what's needed. A little bit of WD-40. That's only to help release the pad carrier bolt. Don't put it on anything else, and be very careful when you do apply it. I haven't got it here pictured, but a little bit of brake cleaner as well. Goes a long way for when you've finished everything, just to spray it all down, make sure that none of your surfaces are contaminated with anything, especially not WD-40, and go from there. A couple of screwdrivers. Screwdrivers are only basically being used as a flat plate, just to clean off the internal anti-vibration, anti-slip plates that are in there. I'll show you when I've got the wheel off and the pads out. I'll show you what we're doing with that and how to clean it. But let's get started. So you're going to want to loosen off all of the bolts while the car is on the ground before you jack it up. Reason for this is obviously it doesn't put any pressure on the transmission with you rocking it up on the ground, because obviously you've got the friction of the ground. So do that now. Okay, so when jacking your car up, scissor jacks like this, no, don't use them. They're dangerous. They twist, slip, not much of a footprint area. That falls off while you're under the car. You'd wish you bought a better one. Something like this. I think this is rated to 5 ton. Jacking point is same as most cars, just underneath behind the front wheel. It's one at the rear wheel as well, designated by the 2 dimples there, either side of where my jack's sitting. So obviously you're fitting in between there, get it nice and snug, and then jack it up from there. Remember to loosen all the wheels before you jack it up, so you're not putting any pressure, undue pressure on the transmission or the CV boots or anything. So yeah, undo the wheels, just a tiny bit, all of the lug nuts before you jack it up. Okay, when jacking your car up, sounds simple, but you don't need to jack it 15 foot in the air. You only need to jack it up enough so that the wheel moves. There's nothing to be gained apart from making the jack more unstable, having it as far up as the jack goes. So keep it as low as possible, just enough for the wheel to move, and then you're good. So I've just loosened these all off. They're all finger tight now, so I can turn them if needed to on there, and obviously that is finger tight on there as well. Okay, so let's jack the car up. Okay, so the car's all jacked up. We can take this off now. And one thing to note about these wheel bolts is every single one has got a washer on the back side, obviously just to spread the load of the nut. Shouldn't fall off because they're ever so slightly mushroomed, but yeah, they've all got a washer on, so don't try putting the lug nut back on if the washer's not there, because it won't be spreading the load. Put these somewhere that you're not going to lose them. It's very embarrassing when you can't put the wheel back on. You'll see also, got all my stuff set up. I'm also on a mat. There's no point doing it, no point being uncomfortable. So I'll probably skip this bit for you. Okay, so that's all the lug nuts out. Now obviously pulling the wheel, sometimes it doesn't work to pull it off. It can be a bit stuck if they haven't put any copper grease behind it. Way around that, get to the top, quick, just hit it slightly, you'll hear it pop off, and then that's the wheel free, and take the wheel off. Okay, so you see most people slide the wheel off and pop it under the car, obviously with the face side up so you're not scratching it on the floor, but do that just in case the car comes down off the jack. At least you've got another safety. You'll also, as well as the normal jack, put another jack in, which I'm going to pop just about here, again just as a safety, so that if it does come down, at least I've got as much stopping me as possible before I get squished. Might give you a second, might give you half a second, might give you an hour and a half, but yeah, don't do them all the way up because you want the main weight to be on this. That's just a bit of a carrier. Okay, so here we have the caliper and the rotor, and obviously all your lug nuts. You'll see when I take the pads out, mine were particularly worn, but effectively all that's holding this carrier in place are two 17, are they 17? I think they're 17, let's just check. Yeah, two 17mm bolts, one on the top, one in the bottom. Okay, you do not need to undo both. You undo the bottom one, take the bolt clean out, and then you can lever this whole pad carrier out. That gives you access to the pistons on the top and everything. Before you do that, it's worth removing this pipe from this bracket, just so you're not putting any undue pressure on this small section of hose. You've got it all up here. This is really easily done just by pushing that back. He says really easy and then can't do it, but yeah, you just push it back. You probably just need two hands. So yeah, it's open at the back, the bracket is, there's rubber bung, and it just slides out towards the back. It just slides out the back like so. Yeah, so you can see that bracket's got a hole in the back. Just means that you've got a little bit more play on this, so that when you lever this up, there's no undue stress on there. So I'm going to undo the bottom 17mm bolt. To help that, I'm just going to give it a tiny bit of WD-40. There's no need to put any on the top because that rotates freely anyway, but just pop a small amount on the bottom just to help it break. I'm not expecting these to be rusted solid because it's a reasonably new vehicle, but yeah, let's pop a bit on that. Okay, so that's the 17mm bolt. released. Take it out with your fingers. And at some point it's going to slide out. Just be careful when you slide it out. Don't drop it on the floor. Don't let a load of rubbish get on it. Just slide it straight out, because it's a greased peg, and that's what your carrier slides up and down on. You can check this to make sure it's got no massive pitting or score marks or anything. This one looks in alright condition. You can replace these. They're about £5–10 for the pair to do both sides. But yeah, these look perfectly fine. Maybe a tiny bit more grease required, but other than that, happy as Larry. So pop that somewhere where it's not going to get any dirt or crap on it. Now your caliper should pivot straight up. Might take a little bit of force. Okay, so the caliper might take a little bit of a effort to pull it out, but literally just pull straight up, slide it up. You can see now sliding it up while we loosened off that pipe there now. Obviously you got your pads, you got some anti-vibration shims which you want to keep. Don't throw those away unless your new pads come with some. The Ferodo ones don't come with a set of pads, so you're going to want to take these off, clean them. That's just these things. There's two of them. There's one vented one, which is a bit more of a rubber finish, and then there's a metal plate one. Try and be methodical about how you take them off, so you know which ones come from which side of the pads. Yeah, and then to take the pads out, it's just a bit of jiggery pokery backwards and forwards. I would be reluctant to use a screwdriver or anything to try and lever them out, because you don't want to damage your disc. So just a little bit of time, they will come out like that, and that's them straight out. You can see there my pads still had a bit of life left on this side. I've already done the other side, and they were a lot lower, so it's probably wearing a little bit more on the left hand side or near side on the car, but these ones are not terrible, but might as well replace them. So like I said, try and keep those together so you know which ones came off what side. That's the anti-vibration shims for the offside. Now, straight away I can see that these ones are the inside pad is a lot more worn. And that's that one. You can see there the wear bar. That's the is worn down. That's the wear bar there. And just so you remember, the wear bar is at the top on the inside of the discs. So when you put your new ones on, don't try and put them like that with the wear bar indicator on the outside at the bottom. They go inside at the top. So now you've got the pads off. Like I said, you need to keep these. It's worth cleaning these up as best you can, so that's why the wire brush is. Well, I've got the wire brush. Give them a wire brushing down. Remember the order that they go in. Generally, the vented one goes against the actual pad. The unvented one goes on the outside, and that's obviously to take the load of the pistons from the caliper. The other area that you're going to want to clean is the metal plate here. Get that to focus. Metal plate here. Okay. You don't need to clean it all. What you do need to clean is the surface up to about the curve there. Coming back to this section, you need to clean all of this box section. Then you need to clean all to there. You need to do that on the bottom, inside and outside, and then you need to do it on the top as well. Same from that corner all the way across around the box section and then to about here. Need to do that on the inside and outside as well. And that's what the screwdriver is for. Really nice and simple. Just cleans it up, get it back to the bare metal. You don't need to scrape the hell out of it. Generally it's only a bit of brake dust and comes off quite nicely. So a little bit like that all the way around. Get it back to bare silver, back to bare metal, and then give it a good cloth down. Without any, you don't need any substance on it. You can use a bit of brake cleaner on this. If you want, spray it with brake cleaner and then scrub it off. That works really well. But this method also works more than well enough for me. So yeah, give it a bit of a scrape, be a bit more thorough than I've done there. I'm going to do it now and then get it all clean. So I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so you can see I've cleaned those up, back to nice shiny metal, inside and out, top and bottom. Now some people will put copper grease on this now to aid with the pad slipping backwards and forwards. Personally I don't. Both surfaces are nice and shiny. There shouldn't be any reason that they don't slide over each other nicely. And let's be honest, the first time that you jet wash the car and you decide to jet wash the caliper through the wheel, which everybody does, you're going to wash away all of that copper grease anyway. So yeah, there's virtually no point in copper grease in these now, and I haven't on any car for the last 10 years, and no problems. If you haven't got one of these nice silver slip plates and you're just putting the caliper straight, sorry, you're just putting the pad straight onto the caliper carrier and the holder, then yeah, the casting generally isn't as nice and smooth as these metal plates are, but make sure you do clean them down nicely, brush them off with any contaminants, and then give them a spray with brake cleaner. Helps loads, gets it all done. Okay, once you've done that, it's wire brush time of these. Wire brush them inside and out, give them a wash down, bit of brake cleaner again, then they're ready to go onto the new pads. Okay, so clean those up. Pop the vented one on first. Obviously clips front and back, and then clips it there. And then with your unvented one, that goes in between those two, and then down onto there. You can then, without touching the surface, you can then slide that straight into the carrier. And that's there. Okay, these aren't held in with anything, they could fall out, but generally once you've got them in place, they're all right. And just do the same for the back side, but obviously that's the one with the wear bar indicator. Wear bar indicator goes at the top, but just do the same. Okay, so that's our two new pads on. Obviously cleaned it all off, got them in. Yeah, now we've got to push back the pistons. Obviously these were clamped in so that when the pads had worn down, so now we need to open that gap back up, and there's a nice easy way of doing that. First off, you need to find the brake fluid reservoir. That's this one here, and you need to take the lid off and then place the lid back on very gently, not under pressure. The idea with that is you're just enabling any fluid to come back up and release. Then down here you're going to need two of these clamps. Okay, and basically you're putting it on like so, putting it on like so, and then clamping it back up very slowly, very controlled, nice and even pressure. Not trying to push the piston in sideways, just trying to do it nice and flat. So I'll show you that now. So you can see I've got the clamp across the whole face of the piston, nice and secured at the back, and you're going to very slowly just push it back. Not trying to do it quickly. You're also looking for the rubber to go in nice as it is. If that starts bulging out in one direction, you're going to need to stop, push it back in, and get it all. And you're pushing that back right up until the point that the clamp meets the face of the cast iron. That tells you that the piston is pushed all the way back. Okay, so that's done. Leave this one in place. It's a double piston caliper. That means if you suddenly start pushing this one back, the bottom one back, the fluid, if you've taken this one off, will push back up and it'll push this piston back out, the top piston back out. So yeah, do that one first. I'll keep it in place and then do the bottom one. So I'm going to do that now. So at the end you'll end up with something like this, caliper top and bottom. Now you can take the calipers off, sorry, not calipers. So now you'll end up with clamps top and bottom on both pistons, push them both back. You've introduced no air into the system that way, so this method there's no need to bleed the brakes. Again, I don't, there's no issues. If you start removing calipers or you start removing the pistons and things like that, then obviously you've got to bleed the brakes because you've introduced air into the system. Yeah. Take these off, lower the piston back onto the top of your pads, and you're almost done. Okay, so that's the caliper back down. Make sure when you're putting the caliper back down that this, in between these two, there's a rubber. You can see it up here better probably. There's a rubber in between this cast iron section and this cast iron section. There's a rubber. Make sure that rubber's sitting exactly the same as the top one when you slide this back down, and it's not pinched or it's not over in one direction. That way when you slide this through, it all fits in nice and snug. So that's all back in. Get that finger tight. And once you've done that, once it's finger tight, you can then torque this back up to the manufacturer's specifications, which I'm sure you can find on Google, or you can just torque it up as hard as you can without breaking it. It's generally what I do. Okay, let's get it bolted back up. So before the wheel goes back on, you might as well just put a small amount of copper grease on the mating surfaces. You don't need a lot. And then spread that round. Just makes it easier the next time you want to get the wheel off in another 90,000 miles. Hopefully. And that's it. Get the wheel back on. Take it off the clamp. Take it off the jacks. And you're almost done. Okay, so once you've got the wheel back on, before you lower it off the jack, make sure you just do these up hand tight all the way around. Remember to do opposites, just to make sure the wheel's seated properly and that all the bolts are seated correctly. Don't put too much pressure on them. You don't want to break that transmission or anything mental. Then lower it down and then torque them up to spec. Okay, so then come into the car, and before you turn the car on, you're going to want to push the brake pedal a couple of times, nice and slowly. So slowly down and slowly up. What that's going to do is just bring the pistons to the pads that you've just come on, because there'll be a little bit of gap there. And it might go all the way down, it might not. Come back up nice and slowly and then push down. What you're looking for is at some point for there to be very little movement on the pedal. Keep going. So the movement's getting less. It's getting less. It's virtually nothing now. There. Okay. So there's virtually no movement in that pedal whatsoever now. So that should be bringing the pistons to the pads to the discs, closing up the gap, and that's what you should want. Then turn the car on, obviously with the foot on the brake. And what you're looking for is the pedal should then go slightly soft underfoot like it does normally. Ignore the routine maintenance. Now you might get a message on there that says braking system service required or something along those lines. You might not. All it's doing is filling the reservoir back up until the pre-tension or the preloader's all done. If you do get the braking service required, just keep pumping the brake a little bit, then turn the car off, turn the car back on, and you should find that that's gone away. Hope it helps. I'm sure there'll be 1,000,001 mechanics out there or people that work for Mitsubishi saying, no, you're supposed to do it this way, you're supposed to do it that way. That's fine. But yeah, if you can do it for 44 quid, I'll come to Mitsubishi and I'll have my brakes done by you. Yeah, all right. Take you about 2 hours maximum if you're taking it nice and steady. But realistically, you can do either side in about 10-15 minutes. Hope this helps.